Are we getting into any of the conspiracy theories for tonight? I'm pumped about it.
Wait, there's conspiracy theories?
You don't know about the Hillbilly Elegy conspiracy theories?
There's seriously Jesus H. There's a conspiracy theory for fucking everything, isn't there?
Oh, let's get into it. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Metacast podcast. That is the podcast that explores itself, explores ourselves, and explores the self in general. My name is Ty. I am on the wrong scene, and I'm going to be one of your hosts this evening.
I am the other co-host that desperately needs to address the trauma from his childhood. Distance.
And tonight is the Metacast movie show about Hillbilly Elegy. Hillbilly Elegy is a 2020 drama. It is written by Vanessa Taylor, based on Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance, and directed by Ron Howard.
Stars Amy Adams, Glenn Close, Gabrielle Basso, and Haley Bennett.
The budget for this movie was around $45 million, and of course, due to COVID, had a limited box office release, bringing in about $38,852.
The tomato meter rating is 26%, with an audience score of 84%.
That's a big difference. That's where the conspiracy theory comes in, actually. Circling around to the plot. After a family emergency, young Yale law student J.D. Vance must return home to small town Ohio, where he is from, and confront a lot of parts of his past. This is based on a true story, of course, based on the memoirs, as we said, Hillbilly Elegy. So this is similar to a few of the movies we've talked about in the past. We are talking about real people here, not just characters, but of course dramatized versions of real people for a movie. So this film is, in my opinion, kind of the corny radio pop of movies. I don't want to call it good, but I can't pretend like sometimes it's not catchy to me. I do think that, similar to like cheesy radio pop, like you can create a good part of a song. That doesn't mean that it's going to be a good song. That doesn't mean it's going to be a good album. But I do think that you can invoke emotion maybe kind of easily. And I think that that's really what this movie does. While watching this movie, I don't feel like it's a good film. However, there are quite a few scenes that I do think resonate with me emotionally. But part of me wonders, it's like, okay, if you have good actors and a good director and a good film score, is that really hard to do? I'm not sure. It may just be kind of like with, cheesy pop. Maybe you could easily create a moment that is going to resonate with, a wide variety of people. So with that being said, but basically bad movies shouldn't make me tear up like this. Watching the movie, there were quite a few emotional parts of it. But with that being said, I cannot call this a good film. Watching it, there was a lot of parts of it that felt cheesy and off. I'm not sure if it's the screenplay or what. I do think the performances were great. I don't want to say that it was the actors. I think a lot of it did have to do with the disjointed direction of the film. I think if you watch it, you'll probably understand where I'm coming from with that. So to give this a verdict, oh man, I'm not sure where I was landing on this one. I was hoping that I would come up with something on the fly, because it is enjoyable, but I have to be objective about this one. I do have to give this one a no. I don't think that it's really worth your time. I think there could have been a lot better of a movie there and a better story there. So yeah, I will have to give this one a no. Where do you land on this one?
Yeah, it wasn't until I heard your take on the film that I might have realized why I thought the way that I thought about the movie. There are some things in this film that, to a much less intense degree, I can relate to. Another thing, my family are McCoys. They are like the McCoys, but we were from the West Virginia side, not Kentucky. So we're not directly related to the ones that were in the feud. So for me, there was this weird idea of and some of these things sort of came up kind of in me about how I grew up and some of the things about where I came from. Because being half Indian and living in the US, recently I've focused a lot on that part of where I came from, and I didn't recognize that there was anything unique about me and my family, just like many people in Kentucky and West Virginia, migrated to Ohio, which is the reason why there's so many hicks in Ohio. And I don't use the term hick in a derogatory fashion. To me, it just kind of is what it is. Like I said, to a differing degree, and I don't know if any of this is necessarily fair to say, but to a differing degree, I can relate to some of the things that JDE had to kind of deal with.
Sure.
Some of the reasons for some of the issues he undoubtedly had about, you know, self-esteem and standing up for himself, and like the causes of that. And also for me, the problem with the movie is that it is the problem with life. In life, there are no good guys and bad guys. There's a whole lot of nuance.
Yep.
But in a movie, you don't want that. That's not what you're looking for. And for a good story, you have to have that. But the thing is, this is based on a memoir. Yeah. So it's like,
that's fair.
There isn't a clear-cut good guy or bad guy, and like that's something that makes the movie difficult. And it was a hard watch, in my opinion. It wasn't easy to watch. It was difficult. You really end up disliking many of the characters. Like I know this is a long-winded one for me, but like I'm having the same problem, man. Like I don't really know where I stand on this one now. Like
it's not easy. Yeah.
I to begin with, I was like, oh, I really like the movie, but it's totally subjective. It's just because it resonated with me in an emotional kind of sense. So like, and the camera work wasn't great. It wasn't the best camera work I've ever seen. Some of the dialogue was a little weird. The casting wasn't great.
I had a lot of problems with a lot of the dialogue, honestly. I feel like so much of what should have been subtle was just really heavy-handed in the dialogue. Like there was a lot of subtleties missing. Yeah.
Glenn Close in the role, not personality-wise, but physically reminded me of my dead aunt. Not a six-legged colony insect guy, meant aunt. Sorry. I'm trying to say that one right now. Okay, yeah, this is the thing, dude. Like I feel like I'm just sitting here stalling, trying to like, but I have to make a decision. It has to be binary.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, we do draw it to the yes or no.
Yeah, there's a minority of people that will be able to relate to this film. So I will say this, I personally thought it was a good film. I enjoyed watching it. It put me in touch with some things that I think I personally needed to be in touch with as a human. And it honestly helped me understand some of the reasons why I am who I am. And I love the idea of roots in the movie. There's a lot of stuff that I think was great, but I don't think that on average, most people are going to get that. So for this one, as unfortunate as I feel it is, I'm with Ty. I have to be objective as a film watcher and reviewer and watching of film. I'm going to have to say no too. It's a no.
I think, and honestly, I mean, I think that is the because I'm in the same boat as you, where subjectively I did enjoy a lot of it, and it did resonate with me emotionally. And I think, but that is, like if I try to be objective, I think that's where I land. Yeah, but well, let's let Spoiler Terry come out and let's get into some of the details of this. And
that was unnecessarily long. I just rambled.
Oh, it's all good. There's no issue there whatsoever. But yeah, so all right. So getting into the beginning of this, I do think like very immediately, the intro was like a super religious, like heavy-handed, like introduction to, but it's like, okay, is that just setting the stage for this is the town that this is, these are the type of people, or like it was kind of like in the beginning though, it's like, hold on, is this supposed to be like, There's a lot of media nowadays that obviously like pander to certain people. You know what I mean? It's like, that's where I was like, kind of in the very beginning, it's like, okay, is this setting the tone for something, or is this just trying to pander to a certain audience that is going to be like, oh hell yeah, this is, you know, this is what I want to see. Like, did you get a feeling one way or another with that? Do you think that it was like setting a stage well, or did it feel kind of heavy handed to you?
I don't know if I would use the term heavy-handed, but
Okay.
I think that the problem I have with it is that it was setting a stage, but I don't know if it was setting the stage. Like, I don't know if that was appropriate.
Yeah.
Like, for the film, like, I feel like what it did, and I'm sorry, my computer kind of got a little screwy, and I didn't hear a small portion of what you just said.
Oh, no worries.
So if I'm repeating, please forgive me. But it feels like they really pushed me super hard in the wrong direction. Like, because I thought it was gonna be like, crap, what was that movie with oh my god, the Skarsgård brother? Not the Skarsgård. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the wrong movie. He wasn't in that. Not the Skarsgård brother, the new Spider-Man guy.
Tom
What's his
Holland?
name? Yes, Tom Holland. What was the movie we watched with him in it? And the
Oh, Devil All the Time.
Oh yeah,
Right?
like
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
expecting something kind of like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
I mean, okay, not quite like that. There's probably never going to be a movie quite like that one, but I was expecting there to be like a religious theme to it. And if you really look at it, there wasn't much. I mean,
Not at
there's,
all.
there's sort of
Yeah.
like that. There's sort of like that, like religious culture theme, I guess. Like
Yes.
not necessarily like true belief, but just going through the traditional kind of things. Um,
That's
so
what
yeah,
that's what felt the weirdest to me, is it's like it's setting the stage almost of like, okay, so I feel like it's trying to set the stage of like, you know, here's you know, small town southern area. A lot of times these people are very religious. Like, okay, let's set that. But then it immediately cuts to the family that is almost in direct juxtaposition of that. Like, you know, the first time we see Glenn Close, she's like flipping off Amy Adams, like perch and swivel or whatever she says. And it's like, okay, so is the point to show some sort of hypocrisy, or is the point to show like I'm not really sure what it was going for there, but it like, yeah, it did seem like almost a constructed break from the like, you know, what most people would picture as like, you know, religious, I guess.
yeah, I think that maybe you're on the right track there, because I can say that for a long time, because I guess of maybe media that I'm exposed to,
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, if I heard somebody with a very deep kind of Southern drawl, I just expected that they were in church every Sunday and every Wednesday
Yeah.
and
Yep.
prayed before every meal and things like that. But there's a lot of people that have a very, heavy Southern American like accent that really just aren't religious at all. So perhaps you're right. I mean, maybe there was a juxtaposition there just to sort of kind of show something to the contrary of the stereotype, that you
Well, and
might think that this is the culture, but is it really?
well, and even like within that,
Maybe.
there's the whole point of like a person that would maybe these people consider themselves religious, and showing the like the almost hypocrisy of like, I don't think there's anything in the Bible that says you can't flip someone off and tell them to perch and swivel or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that's not necessarily anti-Christian. Like, you may look at it as like, oh, is that really what Christians would do? But you know, it's like, it isn't necessarily like I don't think that's one of the 10 commandments or anything, but
Yeah, I mean, Paul had some things in his theology, like his interpretation, that like let no unclean thing come from your lips or something like that. But
hmm,
the thing is unclean is maybe that's just blasphemous. Like it's
yeah,
it's up for interpretation,
pretty subjective.
and
Yeah.
like the F word isn't necessarily blasphemy. It just depends how you use it,
Yeah. Well, I mean, because
And you could
case in
even
point, that word didn't even exist when Paul was writing that, right? Like,
true,
English wasn't even a
yeah,
language,
and
so yeah.
right, and in my experience with actually, I'm curious now to look up what he. I'm assuming that was the earliest transcript they have of that is Greek. I'd be interested to know what word is actually used there now.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there's an interesting thing that I've experienced in like sort of church culture, um, when and that whole thing with let no unclean thing, or to speak no unclean things. Okay, um, talk all the shit you want to about that one woman at church that you heard was promiscuous or whatever, like, talk behind her back all you want, spread as much toxic um, rumors or sorry, as many toxic rumors or as much gossip as you want to, but don't ever say fuck.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's like, but because
that's
all
crossing
of
a
that
line.
stuff, like, I would, yeah, because I would call all those other things unclean. They're actually much filthier than fuck, honestly. It's just, in my opinion, but
I would completely agree. Yeah. And that's why it's subjective. Yeah. It's like, I mean, for some people, it comes down to the meaning of the word. For some people, it comes down to the word itself. Like is it fine for me to say, oh crap, but not oh shit? When I'm meaning the exact same thing, and it's like, yeah.
So here's the weird thing that I'm trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
As you may know, I take notes in my phone, in the notes app on my phone. And the first bullet point I have in my notes says, so many fucking forks.
Okay. So that was at the dinner that he had to go to with the.
Okay, Jesus.
I also.
Why is that on the top of my notes?
I also thought, okay, that's another scene that I thought was just kind of stupid and kind of lazy. And I want to know your opinion on this. Okay. Here is a very accomplished young man. This guy was a Marine. This guy came back. He is already at this point been a Marine. Is a Marine. This guy has served overseas, has come back. He has gone through quite a bit. He has, and at this point in the movie now, he is getting tripped up over the number of forks added. It just seems like the level of stuff that this dude should be able to just handle is above what that little crisis moment was at that dinner. It seemed to me that it was like the character development I'm seeing of this guy was like, hold on, why is he being tripped up by this now? Like, I don't know. It just seemed like it didn't align with what I should be seeing from JD, I guess.
Yeah. And can you tell I've hung out with a lot of Marines? Yeah. If you say were, they're like, I am a Marine. Like, yeah. Okay, sorry. Like,
I appreciate the correction. Yeah, that is true.
Like, once and always. I've been jumped all over a lot of times for that one. In jiu-jitsu, which is even worse, because then they can choke you.
literally jumped all over, yeah.
Yeah, and they do. I do. Well, I don't think that is that crazy, because, like, I've had experience like this before, okay, for instance, this is a movie reference. It's not reality, but, Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight.
Okay.
The quote that is made about, Gotham's most successful attorney or whatever brought to his knees by the trust fund brigade. It's like, it's a bunch of like rich boys and girls like running around, and you're somehow like terrified and like in this little corner now, like hiding from all the people. It's like, well, you're a well-accomplished DA. Like, someone pulled a gun on you in a courtroom and you grabbed it and then took it apart. Like, how could this be scary? Or like, more like real life stuff. Like, I knew a PhD biochemist who I think minored in chemistry, who was married to a particle physicist. And you would think that they would understand when hooking up the old RCA cables to a TV that you hook the red one in the red plug and the white one in the white plug and the yellow one in the yellow plug, but they just couldn't handle that. And I think for me, I think what you're saying to me is almost the irony of the situation, because this is someone who's more than likely been in some difficult situations, and I don't know what his job was, and I don't know what his job was in the Marines, but maybe he's gotten shot at, maybe he's seen his friends get hurt very badly, and it's like, after all those things, the forks.
I think my main point is like, when you, with the examples you brought up, you were talking about like, okay, if a person's broken with particle physics, audio cables don't necessarily directly relate to that. You would assume that they would be smart enough to figure something out, but it's not. But with this, it's like, if you even not even caring what his job was in the Marines, just going through going through the training that makes you a Marine. I think a main part of that is staying calm under pressure, learning to manage a situation that you're in, and just, handling shit. Not not like, and I feel like the number of forks should fall under that list of shit that could be handled, right? Like I don't think that it's like not indirectly related. I think it's more just almost like, the set of skills that you're taught is just kind of like, learn the situation that you're in, adapt and overcome. And that like to me seemed like a very easy thing to adapt and overcome. Like you are literally sitting in a room where everyone around you is an example of what to do. You can very easily quietly just observe what fork they're using for what and do, it's like that to me just seemed like it was like, how could you not just handle this situation without having to call someone else for help? Like I don't know. I know that it was, meant to be a character development moment for us, but it took me out of that moment in the movie, I guess.
Yeah. I agree to some extent, like in like a real deal situation that seems odd, like all you do is just kind of look and then just do what everyone else is doing. Is what people do that all the time. Yeah. But yeah, like I was going to mention the character development thing, because at that scene, we kind of get an example of like what the relationship between JD and Usha is.
Yep.
And that's kind of like that it had to be that, and the thing I say all the time, the plot must go on.
Exactly. Yep.
But there may be, and I get what you're saying, because like, yes, even though the plot must go on, sometimes there must be better ways to do it. Like, is there a way that's better? And if there is, why was that not the one that was written in?
Well, it makes me wonder, was there a real moment? Like, from the reality of his life, was there a moment like that? Did they just need to construct something like that? Like, I would be interested in knowing just simply from JD's life, like, what was that moment supposed to be recreating, I guess.
Right. And like maybe there was a much, much, much longer narrative to something in the book that would tell you like what happened, but they just had to like put it into this one little scene.
How do we show months of relationship development and setting up how these two interact and stuff like that? Yeah. Let's craft one scene where he can, exactly. Yeah.
And, show like his reliance on her, and it's sort of like not like codependent, but reasonably like healthy kind of way, or, that sort of thing. There's some things that I kind of, in watching the movie, that I felt kind of bad about, that I realized, I just had this moment where I thought to myself, why am I perceiving this guy as some like amazing person because he left his hillbilly roots to be successful at Yale? Like, why am I acting like somehow those two contrasts are not so good, when in reality I was more or less raised by
I'm so sorry. Like, real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt. Your camera has autofocused you completely out.
Wait for it. I can just, okay. I can fix this. And
yep, there we go.
How about now?
Perfect. Yep, you are crystal clear.
Fine? Is it still good?
Yeah, you are crystal clear. Yep.
Okay, all right. Sorry for that brief moment.
But before I so rudely interrupted you, you were starting to talk about why we think JD's so amazing for, breaking out of his town and being so successful, quote unquote.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things. Like, I had an uncle. He was actually married to the aunt that Mema in the movie like kind of reminded me of a little bit. He worked in the coal mines in West Virginia, like before they were closed down. He died of emphysema, partially because of the smoking, partially probably because of working in the mines. He was very down to earth, very humble guy.
There's a really good Zoolander line in there somewhere.
They're all the same look. It's all the same look. There was like something about, he was pure of heart but unpolished, and he worked really hard, and he retired very, very old because he just didn't have it in him to do that. That there's this thing that happens so often that I see, that when people look at someone who's, quote, blue collar, that they somehow look down on that person for no fucking reason. That this is an incredibly useful individual with very useful skills. Like, are you gonna fix your plumbing yourself? Like, are you gonna rewire that switch? Like, do you even know how to turn off the circuit breaker so you don't shock yourself to death? Like, do you have enough space somewhere for all the oil that's going to come out of that car? Are you going to replace the compressor?
Mhm.
Like, do you even know like how to put a serpentine belt back on? Do you understand how a tensioner works? Like all these things about these quote blue collar people that like individuals like want to look down on, like somehow they're less. And I think the same way about this whole kind of hillbilly kind of mentality that everybody has, well, and so, honestly, not everybody, but most people have some kind of value in some way. They're
Oh yeah.
able to do something. And that just going to like law school or whatever doesn't, that, it's like, what did he really get out of? And I think that it's the fact that he personally was dissatisfied with where he was.
Well, I mean, yes, and well, first of all, I want to touch on one thing you were saying there. You skipped over a new word that we learned last year for those type of jobs, essential workers. A lot of look, I think of so much. I mean, we learned that term last year. Like so much, so many of those jobs we recognize are essential to our economy and how our country runs. However, we underpay them and we underappreciate them, and we do not give them the what they deserve. But no, I do think the at least the moment that I saw for him in the movie that was the motivation, and what he saw that he was getting away from was the struggles that his grandmother was going through, the Meals on Wheels, like at least in even in that small town, I don't know like what the economy would be like, what that town brings in, but it's like even the like most successful you can be there is still a cap versus getting out and being in a bigger city where you can just earn more and just like there's a different life he can make for himself that he would be able to have more. Now I'm not saying that is just better and that it's like, oh well, you need to move away to to have a better life or anything, but I do say it doesn't seem like it's completely worthless, that it's like he would have had possibly the same quality life without moving. Like I do see that there is a possibility of difference. But
yeah, and I mean for me it was more like, because I mean there's the observable situation that he's in,
yeah,
and then there's the sort of like common stereotypes that we have, and at that point in the story I don't know that I was that familiar yet with him. And that may be the reason why that thought like crossed my mind and why it meant enough for me to like jot it down.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because we don't see we don't see that till way later. When I was scrolling through my notes looking for like the Meals on Wheels motivation scene, that was near the end of my notes. So that's like very late in the movie.
And like, and you can see for him like he is very dissatisfied with where he is, and he chooses to leave. And it seems his sister, she seems okay. She doesn't seem like she wants to be anywhere else. She seems to think that some things could be better, but she's a parent, and being a parent is difficult.
Yep.
No matter where you are. So I feel like that any dissatisfaction she has is the fact that she has a family of her own.
Yeah.
And a marriage relationship of her own, and she's having to look after her mom,
exactly,
who is clearly emotionally unstable. And has a whole lot of issues that really need to get worked out.
Let's get on Bev, because I've got a lot of notes here. Like I honestly like Amy Adams. I think was great in this. I thought she did a great job portraying that character. However, I think you started to touch on one of my main problems with this movie. It feels very disjointed watching it. I don't know, watching this movie, who the main character is supposed to be. If it's supposed to be JD, he does not have the screen time of either Glenn Close or Amy Adams in this. If it's supposed to be a movie where JD is the protagonist, that basically makes Bev the antagonist, and that doesn't work well for the way the story that it is trying to tell you. It's like there would have almost just been a better, more interesting movie about Bev and what she went through, and then having JD as kind of the side character that came out of it. But it's like, the way the story was told, focusing on JD, but then painting the picture of Bev and everything was just, it felt very disjointed to me. I wasn't really sure what narrative I was supposed to be following while watching it.
And I mean, young JD got a hell of a lot more screen time than like sort of what we were given as present day JD.
But by the way, I think amazing casting job between young and old JD. The appearance between those two was just spot on. It was like, as soon as I saw old JD on screen, I was like, oh, that's obviously grown up. Like, I thought that was a great casting job. But
yeah, that worked out really well. And I think, okay, so Was Lindsay played by the same person? They just like changed the makeup?
I believe so. Yeah.
Because it was Haley Bennett did that
Well,
role, and I'm
there
I'm
were
looking for a young Lindsay on here, and I'm not seeing it in the full cast.
well, there was a like she's younger, so young when they were young, she was young. Versus because there were like three time periods basically that the movie took place in. There was like and there are only two actors. So JD played, like the same actor played kind of like fresh out of high school JD and then also present time JD. So the same thing with Lindsay. There was like, the middle Lindsay and then present Lindsay. Same thing with when we would see Amy Adams as, like a little younger and then present. But
Yeah, and I think they really did a good job with everybody. Like even like the old buddies that JD sees at the kind of like cookout / get together.
Yep.
Like that's done well. The mustache was a nice touch.
Yep.
I'm not even, those characters are really flat, so I'm not sure who played what.
Yeah, sure, exactly. They were all just kind of like nameless friend 1, nameless friend 2.
Yeah. And I liked the kind of douchey law student characters that were like around the table with JD.
Yeah.
During the kind of fork scene and like the sort of
necessary.
weird snips you heard of their dialogue. They did a good job with those. It's like in Aftermath, the douchey lawyers there that they overdid it, but they overdid it really well.
Yeah, yep.
And of course, I have to get a little dorky here, and I'll be the first one to go there. JD does play Magic the Gathering, it appears, and I think that for the time period, I believe those cards were time periods like accurate.
Yeah, that should have been like 94. That would have been like revised to new. Yeah. The really cool thing that I liked about that scene, this is kind of like where I wanted to get to with bringing up Bev, was like, I did think, okay, so again, I don't think this film is overall a good film. With that being said, I think the great analogy is like, I can say that there's a bad album, but that doesn't mean there is not a cool part in a song on that album. I do think that scene right there was really well done, of like the Easter dog. Chip, what was it? Chip, was that the boyfriend at that time, bringing the police, the cop boyfriend? I think his name was Chip.
So.
Maybe.
I got them all mixed up, which might have been on purpose, honestly. But
exactly, yeah, right. That would actually be really smart if the names revolved in the movie just because it was like you didn't need to know their name and they just called them the wrong name all the time. Like that would be fucking brilliant writing. But either way, I'm gonna call him Chip. But so Chip brings home the dog. It was like, and then immediately Bev's got like a problem with it, and like you just see this like kind of like, she can't be like the happy mom. There's always got to be like some problem. And like the interesting thing that I thought was really well done with that is like inside the home, she gets all upset about JD being like careless and then tries to immediately afterwards buy his affection by taking him to a favorite store, where then it's fine for him to be dancing around and knock something over in almost the exact same regard. And it's like, and there, it's like she's mad at the shopkeeper for trying to enforce the same rules that she was enforcing in her home. And it's like, I think that I love that kind of hypocrisy. I thought it was done well.
Yeah, I have been acquainted with a few people that had emotionally abusive parents, to the point like where we would have conversations about some of the things that happened in their childhood. And I think one of the things that's the most difficult for a young person to deal with a parent like this is that there's no rhyme or reason. There's no trend. There's no preparing.
Yep.
Things can go from completely fine to absolutely terrible. And in Bev's case, there is this resentment she has for her children simply for their existence.
Yes.
That the fact that you don't want to care for this little creature that's taking all this stuff from you, and it's, I mean, being a parent is counterintuitive. I mean, you're essentially just giving a whole bunch of stuff that you'll never, ever, ever, ever have returned to you.
Yep.
For this human to just leave and never really thank you for anything, or maybe to express gratitude but never be able to really repay anything. And that's just the nature of being a parent.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I've heard parents claim that the just the act of having a child itself is gratifying enough that you don't need any of that, you know, but yeah, I think your point does stand though, that yeah, it is, you know that you are giving with no return. That is the contract.
Right.
Yeah.
And different people handle it differently. And, you know,
Yep.
Bev obviously has difficulties regulating emotions, and is in denial about everything about herself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything is someone else's fault. There's a lot of immaturity in her. You know, just a lot of things that she fails to realize are wrong. And you know, at the end of the baseball card, or I guess football card scene, doesn't she like steal the card that he wants?
Yeah, she steals quite a few of them, and then like, yeah, gives them to him in the car, and says like, she even says like, oh, it was so good, I might not even tell Chip. She's like, oh, never mind, I'll tell him, and then leads right into the scene where she's like, I could crash this car and kill both of us. Like,
Which that shit is completely insane. Like for that, it's that you see someone that's upset and miserable, and they just have to inflict their misery on everyone else around them. And you know, he speaks the unpleasant truth about her, that, oh, if we move in with the person we're calling Chip, I guess, if we move in with Chip, we're just going to move out in a few months and have to find a new place to live. And he says the thing about how his friend calls it the flavor of the month or whatever. And the reality is these are unpleasant truths that he's telling.
yeah,
And something that she knows is true. She knows.
Yep.
She must.
That's the only reason why she's upset hearing it.
Right.
If it wasn't true, like she wouldn't care. Yeah.
And then she hates the fact of it, that the fact of the matter being that this is true.
Yep.
She hates that. She hates the fact that her son pointed it out, and so she proceeds to scare the shit out of him, more or less threaten him with death.
Yeah.
Beat him to the point where he runs off frightened to a stranger's home. And then at the end of it, he comes back to the abuser.
Yep.
And it's this whole like weird family thing.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's the peril of your family being shitty, but you can't do anything about it. This weird family first, but what if, you know, this person's got issues? I mean, you know, this is great. Like, it's funny. Like, of the many episodes we've had where like we agree with each other while we're speaking, I'm just expecting you to give me like an amen, brother, because of like all the resounding agreement you've given about my thoughts about this character. Is there anything else you'd like to add about how shitty Bev is, sir?
No, see, the thing is, I love Bev as a character because, okay, it's the same as oh fuck, where did we talk about the movie that showed us the little bits of fucked up that's inside of all of us? I forget where that was, like, within the past few weeks. What was that?
Oh fuck! I'm actually gonna. I'm legitimately gonna go through our episode schedule.
Was it Gone Girl?
Look at which film. I think so. That sounds right.
Okay, that feels right. But so I think that's kind of one of the things I see in Bev too, is like that. I mean, she does obviously try to be a good mom in a few spots. She does, like, she is like someone obviously trying to be a good person. Like, I mean, like JD talks about when advocating for her later, you know, she put herself through nursing school to raise kids, you know, like she definitely tried to be a good person. However, there is the fact that she is obviously, like you're saying, resentful for just having kids. I mean, that line where she's like, all I've ever done since I was 18 is care for these kids. And it's like, yeah, that's gotta fucking hurt as a kid. Like, I mean, young JD is probably 13 or whatever, hearing that, like knowing like, fuck, like my mom basically feels like my existence ruined her life. And I guarantee there's probably a lot of people that have to deal with that emotion, that there's been some sort of family blow up where they've heard their parents say something like that, and that's gotta really fucking hurt. But I do think that I don't think Bev was just a one-dimensional shitty character. I think there was a lot there, and I think, like I said earlier, I think there could have been a great movie simply about Bev, and almost just kind of like, you know, letting a lot of the other characters fall to the side.
Yeah, and maybe this is a terrible comparison, but I'm gonna make it anyway. So I used to watch NFL football quite a lot, and then I realized how much of my life I was wasting on it, so I kind of stopped.
Gotcha.
But I was also doomed to a life of disappointment because I was a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Ooh, okay.
And during that period of time, Tony Romo was the quarterback. And while all the other Cowboys fans were like, "Oh, we're gonna Super Bowl this year, Super Bowl, Super Bowl," I'll be like, "We're not even gonna make it to the fucking playoffs, guys. You're idiots." And the problem was that Tony Romo, when he was the quarterback for way longer than he should have been, when he was good, man, he was fantastic. But his consistency was terrible. When he was bad, he was the worst. And I kind of feel like Bev is the Tony Romo of momming.
I could see that.
You have these moments where when you're good, you're really, really good. On the seldom occasion, you're really, really good. But then when you are bad, which is often, it is the worst. And that's kind of how I feel. And like this thing you're saying about, like, a minute ago, just with the acting like, taking care of you is some terrible burden. It gives you the self-image, because when you're young, you have no standards for truth and you have no standards for good and bad. Everything just is.
True. Yeah. Well, so and unfortunately, many of your standards of truth come directly from your parents. Things that they say are just fact or law because you view them as a source of absolute truth. Yeah.
Yeah, and what they say about you have no standards for what to determine yourself to be. So all you have is what they tell you. And if you are some miserable piece of shit, I hate you, I wish you were never here, like, you're the worst thing that ever happened to me, I'm so tired of taking care of you, like that kind of stuff, that's going to become part of your identity.
Yeah.
And I don't
probably
like
a large
using
part
the
of
term.
It,
Right, yeah. And I don't like using the term my truth or your truth, because I think that truth can in many cases be determined objectively, but there are certain things about where we come from, I think, that
I think there's
a sense of truth.
Yeah, but there are reality, like real truths, objective truths, and there are experiential truths. There is the truth of like something you experience could be different than the truth of what someone else has experienced, but that doesn't mean that the actual reality is different.
Right. Yeah. So, like, for instance, our experiential truth about this movie is that we both liked it, but the objective truth is it's not a good movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. And that's one thing. And honestly, movies like this have kind of taught me to try to be more objective with being a critic, where it's like, not that I want critics to tell me how to like a movie or not. However, though, there is, like, when I look at a movie and it's like, if I like it and then I see the vast majority of critics do not, it does, I can't always just say like, oh, everyone else is wrong. Like, they're all out of touch. I'm the one that's got this right. At a certain point, I need to step back and be objective and be like, okay, well, what was it that I liked about this? Let me read what other people's criticisms were. Were they fair? Were they objective? Were they being emotional? Or was my positive reaction being emotional? Like, that's kind of like, and that's kind of where I got to, is like, I felt that trying to be rational about this, it was like, yeah, I feel like what I liked about it was more of an emotional reaction. And I feel like if I really try to look at it as just a piece of film, that maybe I don't feel that it's the best, but yeah.
And I have a feeling that the 84% audience score are people that felt the same way that we felt about the movie.
Ooh. Well, are you ready for the tinfoil hat? Because that's where the conspiracy comes in.
So, like, I honestly thought you were just messing with me.
No.
Because I just thought you were trying to get a good intro out of me for the theme song. Which is funny because that's not even the one that will air. Because so no one will. Oh, you guys don't even know what I'm talking about right now. Okay, tinfoil hats. Let
me show you another example here. Do you have my stream pulled up?
I'll pull it up now.
We'll show you another example here of maybe, you know what? Oh, that's right. I can't do that. I forgot that doesn't work. Have you heard anything about the movie Run, Hide, Fight? Ben Shapiro's company's movie that's like supposed to be the school shooting version of a Die Hard, basically. A young teen girl is
about that.
Okay. Yes. That's another movie that is very similar in Rotten Tomatoes to this, where tomato meter 44%, audience score 93%. Big disparage between the two. Same thing with Hillbilly Elegy. All right, so here's where I actually wish I had a tinfoil hat. This would be like, it'd just be an amazing prop for this part. But so the argument is that the liberal Hollywood elites don't want conservative stories like this, doing well. So all the critics are gonna vote it down, but the real Americans out here, we are the viewers that we like it. So that's one narrative. A lot of what other people are saying is there's probably a good chance that there are a lot of right-wing media outlets that are telling people to go onto sites and positively review things. So positive, and there might be a chance when you go to Rotten Tomatoes that maybe a lot of those, like when you look at Run, Hide, Fight, were those a lot of, Daily Mail viewers that were told to go and give it a positive review because the liberal elite was keeping their score down or something? Like, who really knows like where the objective truth is there? But that is definitely the narrative that's going around online as far as like there being a disparity between the two scores.
That is something.
It is something.
I don't know. That's pretty nuts. I mean, I just think maybe critics don't like it. Maybe
I think it's a reach. I do think there is something to be said about the way the narrative of Hillbilly Elegy, the way the story plays out, it does have some sort of some conservative tones to it, as far as like the the kind of like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps kind of thing. So I could see people saying like, oh, is this a red movie versus a blue movie, and how like, oh, the Hollywood elite aren't gonna let us like this, so they'll tell us that this movie's bad for, like, I do think that it is people trying to make everything political when I don't think it needs to be. I think like, but
I mean, I just think that certain type of people, because I think the differentiation here is critics versus typical movie watchers.
Mm-hmm.
And we've always had different ideas. Like when I worked at Blockbuster way back in the day, I've shared the times, I believe there's a guy that I worked with that was a film student, and whenever one of our customers would come up with a movie that I watched that I thought was horrible, I'd be like, hey, look, I'm not going to tell you all what to do, but I want to just let you know, I personally did not think this was a great movie. Y'all might have a different perspective. You might like it better, but I didn't really like it. I just want to let you know. And like, well, he said it was good. And I'd be like, oh, he's a film student. And they'd be like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay. And they kind of like walk off because they'd realize that this might be too artsy.
Yeah.
And some of the customers that I had there, like, I knew what they liked too.
Yeah.
So the ones I definitely knew what they liked, and I knew that they like movies like that, I'd be like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be like, but he's a film student.
Yeah.
But I feel like if someone came up with a movie I recommended, he'd probably be like, yeah, but he's an idiot.
Yeah. I was going to say that. Thank you for making the joke for me. That was exactly where I was going with that.
So he has terrible taste in film. I am the keeper of the gate. And you shall not pass the doors of this establishment with this movie in your hand. It is not a film. It is just a movie.
But I mean, with that being said, it is totally true that very often critics and the average moviegoer may have a different opinion on things. However, I do think that a lot of this, the accusation that I more agree with, where my tinfoil hat comes on, that I actually think that this may be really what's happening, is I do feel like a lot of the scores are astroturfing. I do feel like it is very likely that there are media organizations that are telling people to go give positive reviews to movies because the critics are voting this down, so you need to do your job of going and voting it up. So it's like, I do wonder, it's like the real audience score without any sort of call to action like that, would it actually be as high as it is? There may be maybe it wouldn't be as low as the critic score, but would it actually be up in the 80s, or would it be somewhere maybe in the 50s or 60s or so? But there's no way of telling, right?
True. I mean, there's no. I mean, at least for us, there's only for us to tell. But
Yep.
you know, when you pose your, if you make it sound like marching orders to your audience, or make it sound like there's some underlying mission, or you're either with this YouTube channel or you're against it, kind
Yep.
of thing, then you can. It is easy to get people to kind of like vote this, that thing. But there is the only thing about this film that I really viewed as conservative, I guess, would be like kind of the emphasis on family, particularly the nuclear family.
Yeah.
But the problem is that in this film, it's almost to a fault. So I don't know if that really counts,
Well,
because there's a difference between.
there's a little bit of the like like even I think I like seeing it at the dinner where the fork incident happened, where there's kind of like, you know, he starts to talk about like the interesting thing about his family, you know, and it's like everyone just kind of tunes out and starts looking, you know, it's like it's almost like the elites of that institution are like, you know, not at all interested in the real roots of an American, you know, like that to me even almost seems like there's a little bit of undertones there too. And that's where I was asking earlier, it's like, is this trying to pander to a certain audience, or is this trying to tell a story genuinely? I don't necessarily know. It's like, I wonder, you know, because I've seen other stuff from Ron Howard, and I don't know if I've ever seen other stuff from Vanessa Taylor, but yeah, just wondering, like, you know, is it genuinely something you're trying to do, or is it just kind of like, all right, I think this audience would want to hear or see this. How can we get them to enjoy this?
Yeah, and you know, I don't know that JD had necessarily anything in mind when he wrote the book
Mhm.
necessarily. I just said necessary and necessarily both in the same sentence. So necessarily. Um, but you know, as we've seen, you know, films do change books a lot.
True. Yeah.
So I
Yep.
don't know, maybe there was something by the creators, but I mean, you know, it's this is the Arrested Development guy. This is the Apollo 13 guy. This is the Beautiful Mind guy.
Yep.
You know, Ron Howard like makes a lot of really good stuff.
It's also the Solo guy, so he also makes a lot of
Wait,
really
he did
bad.
Solo?
Yes, so that's kind of that was what he did right before this too, and that's kind of like Ron Howard's last two. Solo into this were not really, you know, did not impress me much. To quote Shania Twain.
I mean, and Solo posed the same problem. I was like, who's the main character here?
Yeah,
Because the moment that Donald Glover shows up, it's like, who cares?
yeah,
Donald Glover's in this movie.
yeah, it becomes a Lando movie. Yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah.
Solo was directed
In
by Ron
fact,
Howard too. Yeah.
in fact, I'm gonna maybe write a fan fiction piece called Lando.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to actually do that. I think that would be fun. Well, and you know, that whole kind of sort of conservative-ish, or like maybe let's call it because I feel like there's a lot of different types of people that call themselves liberals, and a lot of different types of people that call
Yeah.
themselves conservatives. There's a lot of different types of people that call themselves centrist or unaffiliated.
Yeah.
I think that there's a sort of the traditional type conservative.
Okay.
There's one line where they're in the town in the hearse with I guess it's they call him Papa, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
grandfather.
yeah. It was Mamaw and Papa. Yep.
And they're like, you know, driving on down in the hearse, and you see everybody taking their hats off, you know, putting over their hearts and stuff, and you hear JD say, "Why do they do that?"
Why do they do that?
And he's like, so she says, "Because we're hill people, honey. We respect our dead."
Mm-hmm.
Which to me, like, there's some sentiment about that tradition that I think is kind of cool. You know, like actually having some kind of reverence, maybe not for the dead person, maybe it is the dead person too, but just a sense of solidarity that someone recognizes that you and your family are going through a thing.
Yeah. Yep.
And the fact that people care enough to stop for and do that, even if it is just a tradition thing they feel like they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That there's something about that I kind of liked, honestly. I thought was kind of cool.
I do too. But however, now I'm okay. So I'm not a great writer. I could not put out a screenplay or anything like this. But there is part of that line that is like us versus them, because we're hill people. We respect our dead. There's, you know, part of that is almost like, oh, and they don't. You know, whatever we view them as, they like, we, you know, why not just because in our community we respect our dead, or something like that, where anyone listening to that line would go, hell yeah, me too. You know what I mean? Like there's that's what I'm talking about as part of the pandering, where it's like it's almost like some of it is drawing a line where it needs to be like, oh, we do this and they don't. Now I'm not going to tell you who they are, but you know who they, and it's like, it's almost like to the person watching it, that's kind of where my mind goes, is it's like, I see way too much division being enforced by other stuff. And part of me wonders is like, is some of that the same shit where it's like, are you drawing kind of invisible lines of division where they don't need to be, rather than just kind of stuff that could appeal to more, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I guess because I sort of, when she said it, I took it in the way that I would typically mean it, which I mean, of course, means I imprinted some of myself onto to the line. But it's more like, well, did you ever see that movie? I think it was Head of State, where Chris Rock, he runs for office.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
And the guy he'd say, "God bless America and no place else." Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was that movie, or Nowhere Else, whatever he says. That for me, when I say something like, I say like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, something like that, or someone tells me like, oh, you don't have to call me sir, dude. I'm like, oh, this is the South, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to say that we only do that in the South, but where you are is a region where most of us are taught to say that thing. It's supposed to be a sign of like respect or reverence. And I have my big boss, one of my big bosses at work, is in England. And when I call her ma'am, they don't do that there. And I think pretty much all of England. Because because she said to me, she was like, every time you call me ma'am, I just look around to see where the mother-in-law is in the room. And I was like, oh, it's just a Southern U.S. thing.
Yeah.
A way to show respect, ma'am.
Yeah. See, but if you would have said it as like, here in America, we respect our elders. You know what I mean? It's almost like that reads more as like, oh, and you guys don't. You know what? Like, and that to me, I guess, is like how that line came across a little bit, is like less about enforcing the respect that those people had, and more kind of almost like pointing a finger at those that don't. But maybe I don't know, that might just be me being a little too sensitive about it. But I guess maybe I want to be more of a Hill person, and I recognize that I'm not, and that's what the problem is I want to be included.
And because that's the exact line, like, "'Cause we're Hill people, honey, we respect our dead."
Yep.
Like, that's exactly what's said there. Like, I actually rewound it to get the exact quotes, and those specific words, to me, at least, my truth about the line, experientially, subjectively, I didn't get that from it.
Okay,
that might have been there. I mean, because I was saying something about, one day I was talking to a friend at work, and I said something about like barbecue and four-wheeling and hunting and guns and all this stuff, and I was talking about it like in America, and then I said to her like, you know what, I just realized that down here we just think that everything Southern is American, pretty much. Yeah, like, and nothing else. Yep. And I was like, that is true, and now, like, I say those things in jest, like as a joke, yeah. Yeah, so in some ways, like, I have been guilty of some of those things, but to clarify, I consider myself a city boy that likes to do country boy things. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely like there has, even though I took it, like, there has to be a non-zero number of people that also took it that way. Just, that resonated with them, that like, that maybe that it caused some division, where they saw it as like, oh yeah, they don't respect their dead as much as we do. Like they like, I guess, but yeah, I do. It's probably a petty issue that I had with the line, though. It sounds like you might be one of those people that's trying to silence this movie with your liberal agenda. You caught me. All right, Soros, I need that money, please. I've been putting in the work. Can I please get the Soros paycheck now? But no, also the Earth is flat. Exactly, of course. One thing that I had here in my notes that I wanted to touch on, like, I started talking about it earlier, where a lot of
a lot of it felt cheesy to me, and I don't know, it shouldn't for this quality of movie, and that's where I'm not sure what was rubbing me the wrong way. So many of the scenes, that the term that just kept popping up was like heavy-handed. So much of good film is about like, show me something, don't tell me. And I feel like so much of this movie was just telling me over and over and over again what was happening. It was like, even like, okay, the what we pointed out earlier of like trying to do some character development or character disposition even of Mamaw. The first time you see her with the like flipping Amy Adams off and like this, like that was okay. I guess they're quote unquote showing you, but they're really just telling you. You know what I mean? Like that is the least subtle way you can show quote unquote how this character is. It's like, you know, like it was like one step beyond JD just going like, oh, my mama was pretty rude all the time. Like, I don't know. It just, a lot of it felt like it could have, there was just like a level of subtlety that is normally in these dramas that just felt like it was missing from this.
Yeah, and I mean, I can say that in my lifetime, knowing um knowing like older women from that area that grew up in like the hill country, that that is how they are. Like they
Yeah.
are heavy-handed.
Yeah.
So as a filmmaker, maybe it would make more sense to be a little more subtle, but that's really how it is. Like there's the hello, how are you doing? How was your weekend at church? And the hello, grandchildren, give Mamaw some hugs and kisses. And then there's, hey man, don't you fucking touch my grandkid, I'll kill
Yeah.
you. Like that's how those women are. Like
Yeah.
they really are like that.
Well,
So
yeah, I'm
but I
not
mean
saying
I do
it's
recognize your perspective but they started that shit real fucking early.
exactly. That's what I'm
So
saying. I'm
I
not
think
saying it's not accurate. I'm just saying, as far as pacing and getting into a film, it does not feel like it leads you in as a, at least it for me, it did not. My truth. It felt, as a viewer, it didn't feel like it brought me in at the pacing that I would have expected from this type of drama. And then not even like right at the beginning, then just other ways it did that, of different ways that it should be setting things up. It was more like, and maybe it's screen time, you know, maybe like the first edit of this movie was like what we're going to watch next week of 4.5 hours, and they realized they had to cut some shit down, and that meant that the pacing had to, you know, change a lot. But so I mean, I you know, there could be very good filmmaking reasons why that happened. I'm just saying, as a viewer, a lot of that did feel like it was like, okay, well, you're basically just kind of like telling me right now how this is rather than showing me gently.
yeah, like well, okay, I could probably summarize your perspective with one not exact line from Star Wars, but um I know you feel afraid, Padme. I'm afraid too.
That is a good one.
It
The
just
line from Star Wars that really jumped out to me in the beginning of this movie was, "I've got a bad feeling about this."
yep. There's a disturbance in the force.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one.
I sense much fear in you. Oh god, I could make fun of Star Wars lines all night. Look, but hey, for the record, I love the movies, but god,
Yeah,
man, is that you don't watch them for the dialogue. But no, I mean, I feel you like as a watcher in the film, like, and the thing we joke about a lot, that like all the character development you get in any movie made between like 1975 and maybe like 1993 is some character says to the protagonist, "You're the best."
yeah, yep.
And like that's it. Like,
That
oh,
guy
I
must
guess
be the
this
best.
person's the best.
Yep.
And then they kill a bunch of people. Speaking of action films,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that like good, bad, and neutral Terminator line like the cringiest shit you've ever fucking heard in your life?
Yeah, I wasn't like a fan of that analogy at all. I didn't. Yeah, I was
That was
really lost in
garbage.
that scene. Yeah.
I really hope his grandmother didn't say that to him.
I'm worried that was like specifically included because it was just really straight out of his history or something. But yeah, I just thought that was really lame. I mean, it's cool that Mamaw liked Terminator. I mean, T2 was a good movie. Like that's, you know, that part was cool, but yeah. And I mean, the greater lesson from that scene of really learning who Papaw was, I guess, further down the line, and some of that stuff, that was the more interesting part. But yeah, the analogy was just kind of weak.
You know, there's something about that too that kind of, it actually just hit me now. It's not in my notes, but I thought about that. if you think about many of our parents like had us, 18, 19. I mean, some folks as young as like 15, 16, like,
Yeah.
or, 23, 25. My mother was in her 30s, I believe, when she had me.
Okay.
And it makes me think that for a lot of us, there were 20 some entire years that we didn't even exist, that our
Yeah.
parents did, and our grandparents even more, 60 years, whatever. So there's so much about them we don't know from before. We know one person and we don't know any
Yeah.
of what they were before. And you find things out later and it gets a little crazy. And I think that there's a lot of that is the moment that many of us have when we realize who the people in our lives were, like who they used to be before they learned some lessons.
Well, yeah, because all I mean, you know them as a certain role. Like you know them as
Right.
a grandmother. They were not always a
Right.
grandmother. So like that's when 15-year-old, I forget what Mama's name was, but she was not at all a grandmother yet. She was someone growing into like an adult. Yes, of course it's gonna be a completely different person. Yeah.
And like I also think that as far as acting goes, um, just since we're on the subject of the character,
Mhm.
I had a feeling Glenn Close was going to steal the show, but it wasn't until the end of the film, toward the end, where we see when she takes matters into her own hands, so to speak, and
Yeah. Yeah.
takes JD, that you see some of the intensity.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of that I've really seen from Glenn Close in that way. She even manages to well up tears when she's like delivering the lines, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow,
She's a
like
good actor. Yeah.
that was high caliber shit. Like, and your only background is an old sedan, or actually
Yeah.
that was a two-door with a sedan.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
just like, I did that whole part of the sort of, make something of yourself scene. I really thought that Glenn acted that very well.
Yeah.
Um,
100%. Yeah.
and even though I think Usha was more of a flat character, I think that was a great cast. I think she did
Yeah.
a great job.
Oh yeah, what was
Um,
that was a Frida Pinto, I guess is her name. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not familiar with her from anything else, but yeah, I thought she was. I mean, limited screen time in this, but yeah, I thought she was great in the role that she did. Yeah.
oh, she's from Mumbai. Interesting. Yeah, I just looked her up for a second. Um, yeah. And then there's the one you see a sense of um, I'll just pronounce this word the way I hear it pronounced by people that are smarter than me. Naivete.
Okay. Okay.
In Usha, when it's like, oh, I can come help. I was with my grandmother in the hospital, and JD's
Yeah.
like, it's not the fucking flu. And there's a brief moment where I think Usha has a realization of like the weight of things. And is it just me, or did it seem to me that that whole road trip call from Ohio back to Yale,
Hmm.
or the Yale area, it seemed like maybe those two didn't really know each other that well until that moment.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, I got that same feeling. Whereas like we were okay, they established us with this like relationship earlier where it felt like they were very close, and then now this is their getting to know each other moment. That yeah, it did seem kind of strange. Yeah.
I love the "Are you gonna die" scene in the hospital. Like, that's actually that whole scene was hilarious with
It was
JD.
good. I don't
I
goddamn
said,
know.
you know, like,
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. There was a lot, I think, of like almost throwaway lines that were like JD wanting to watch Meet the Press. There was a special on about Monica Lewinsky and her being like, I don't want to hear
yeah,
any more of that filth. Like stuff like that I thought was just like really nicely done. That it was like, yeah, I wonder from JD's past, it's like, did he have to deal with that of like being interested in literally what's going on in the world and having someone tell him like, no, I don't want to hear about that filth. Like,
and I liked there's a lot of period specific stuff in there too with the
mhm.
Monica Lewinsky. I think he's wearing a Megadeth shirt at one point. Metallica's Testament, like they listen to metal, and that Eagle Eye Cherry song "Save Tonight"
Yeah, yep.
is playing the electronic store with the calculator and calculator. I told you I'm a McCoy.
Not only the period specific stuff, but like there's a lot of just like region like I mean, I have to admit it. I ate fried bologna sandwiches growing up because of being from West Virginia. When there was that scene of like I was like, yeah, part of me was like, hell yeah, brother, I wanted one right then. And that is like those are the parts of watching this movie that I had to realize it was like, okay, I'm only having an emotional reaction to this because it resonates with a part of me. It's like that does not mean that this is well done or well crafted.
I mean, same here. Like I felt that way too. Like, you know, it was fried bologna with American cheese on like white bread,
Yep.
like fried in a pan that
Yep.
probably had like the grease in it from the bacon yesterday. You know,
and you're saying American cheese. Individually wrapped Kraft singles. I don't think you can even call that cheese. It is just
it's gotta be cheese product.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cheese flavored dairy product.
That the syrup scene.
Yeah. Yep.
I say syrup.
See,
syrup.
I definitely say
thought
syrup.
That's how you're supposed to say it. I honestly God didn't know. And you know, like my family, like you don't wash the dishes or put them in the washing machine. You wash the dishes and they go in the washer. Like it's so much of this stuff that I kind of grew up around that, you know, for me, okay, that's something maybe we should raise. Like if you know that you have roots in the hill country or you have any family from the area, like you should watch the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
And
yeah.
maybe you'll get the same thing out of it that I did. Because for me, and honestly, I thought I was going to be able to talk about this and not be like weirdly emotional. I practiced this, no joke, in the car without getting all choked up or whatever. But there's something about me having family from that area that worked in the coal mines and left West Virginia when there was no more work and ended up in Ohio and continued this kind of work hard mentality that it made me realize that and also with JD realizing it too, it made me realize that my hillbilly roots might be one of my biggest strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's not just a bunch of dumb, uneducated people with no teeth.
Yeah.
There's virtue there. There's the value of hard work and like putting your nose to the grindstone and that shit. And there's that quote, greatest generation kind of vibe about a lot of it. And, you know, for all the faults that my parents had, just like everyone else's, that was one thing that showed through for me was, you know, be tough. You know, my mother, I had a conversation with a coworker recently that they were talking about how they were so happy that their mom did this really nice thing for them and that they loved their mom. And I said, you know what? I love my mom too. You want to know why I love my mom? And I was like, do tell. And I was like, well, I was training for a bicycle race a few years back, and I ended up with some nerve issues in my hand from like compression. And I was on the phone complaining about why this has to happen right before this race. And I'm about to do the hardest thing I've ever done on a bicycle. And why does this have to happen to me? And what am I going to do? And my mom told me to stop whining.
That's good advice.
That's why I love my mom. And there's something about that kind of ruggedness, because surviving up there was never easy. And you know, there's just something about that. And this for me is a good movie for us to do because it fits our theme a lot.
Yeah.
Because this podcast is about the self.
Yeah.
About itself, about ourselves, and the self in general.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's just something I think that everybody should recognize is like, figure out where you came from.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to you. There's a lot to you. And there's a line in the movie about where you came from, which I'm not going to say because it might be your favorite one. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
That it's important to know that, you know, like lineage and, you know, or even the fact that you discovered like how your name's actually spelled.
Yeah. Stuff like that is cool.
Tool that belonged to an ancestor. Like you're holding a thing that was held and used for, you know, many years, I'm certain, that has like the unfucked up spelling of your name before American immigration said, "Yeah, we'll just write what it fucking sounds like."
Yeah.
So yeah, I recognize I was really long-winded right then, but that was something that I just was important for me to share, and that I also say syrup funny. Did you notice that they even had the old Apple iOS on the phones?
I did notice that. Yeah, I thought that was a great touch back in like the early night. Yeah, I thought that was great.
Also, Usha, fucking keep her. Just saying.
Yeah.
Good thing he married her.
100%. Yeah. I do think. Okay, so one thing that really stood out to me a lot from this movie in like my meta notes, like past the chronological notes. I do think that it is very common, almost. It is not guaranteed, but without putting in extraordinary effort, the vast majority of people are going to end up in a similar economic condition to how they grew up. That is just like the data just kind of shows that. Like, unless you really put in extra effort or something, very fortunate happens to you, you kind of end up in the same position that you were in growing up. So that's what I see is like, that's what JD saw that he needed to break away from, is that if he wasn't going to do something, again, I'm trying not to use the word extraordinary again, but like not going to put in some ridiculous amount of effort, that he was going to just end up in the same situation that he saw that his loved ones were in. And now that I think that in the larger world though is a problem that many people don't necessarily see. They see the extraordinary person. They see, oh, this person came out of poverty and became a millionaire. Everyone can do it. And now it may be true that everyone can do it, but the thing is, when you expect everyone to do the extraordinary, you start to look at the people that aren't doing the extraordinary as somehow below average, when maybe they are either just average or above average even for, so that I think is like, there's this weird skew that we have when we look at like someone that was able to like do something for themselves and pull themselves out of an environment. And we look like, and that is a great thing, but we look at that as like, oh, that should be the norm and everyone can do that, when we don't recognize like how much effort that took, how unrealistic that is, and how rare that normally is.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a lot easier for us to measure everyone by the extraordinary because of the way that media and exposure is right now. I mean, like, we have a platform right now, and we were just two people that you sent me a text message out of nowhere, and you were like, our conversations are pretty interesting. Do you want to do a podcast? And then a couple weeks later, here we are. We didn't even know the hell we were doing. We have an extremely limited budget. Like, we don't have a whole lot of money into it. And we have a platform here. So it's so easy, because before you just had to be the fastest or the smartest or the richest in your town or maybe your county. And now, you can compare yourself to all kinds of people. So we can forever and forever find so many extraordinary people that we can somehow think are the norm.
Yeah.
But they're just not, and like people like David Goggins, he's like, I ran on 2 broken legs in the middle of SEAL training. If I can do it, you can do it. No, dude.
Yeah.
You are a different kind of human, bro.
Exactly.
Like, you really are.
I love the story. I love listening to him. I love, but it's like, once he gets to the point of, if I can do it, you can do it. That's where it's like, I don't necessarily agree. And now, not to play down everyone's abilities, it's just, you cannot expect the law of large numbers just says that the vast majority of people cannot actually do the extraordinary. There's a reason why it is extraordinary, because only a few are capable of it.
Yeah, and maybe you might give me some of the grit or motivation, or maybe not motivation, inspiration, I guess.
Sure.
To try to get to my highest potential.
Yeah.
But it's probably not yours.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And I think that's what now of course, and I think that as we've both realized, making content online, the realistic, the rational, the logical way of saying things doesn't really get the most viewers. I think going over the top, saying that, like, the crazy thing is that's how you make a splash online, and that's how you get viewers. So I do think that probably a lot of times that's really what's happening. If you get to the core of the idea, it probably is a lot more rational, a lot more like logical. However, the soundbite, or the headline or whatever, the clickbait title is, like, I ran on 2 broken legs, you can too. Like, Oh, well, can you really like if you really have a conversation with him, is that really his belief? You know, if we sat down and had a logical conversation with him and talked about the extraordinary and the number of people that can really accomplish that, does he actually believe that everyone is capable of doing that, or is his true belief a lot closer to what you said, where he just wants people to do the best that they can for themselves?
Yeah. Maybe we should see if he wants to sit down and talk to us. I don't know how much that
Sure.
would cost.
Yeah, David, if you're watching, just give us a call. We'll have you on anytime. We'll try to fit you in the schedule. You know, it's we've well, what movie would you want to watch?
Yeah, we've got a lot going on.
What movie do you think David Goggins would pick?
Rudy.
I could see that. That's actually good. Yeah, I can see
You
that.
would pick Rudy.
That's a good one. Let me see. What is some of the? There's like so many things I like, little bullet points I had in my notes, just because so much of this movie did like little tiny things to paint picture. Like for instance, like Mama actually did light Papa on fire. That shit went by really quick, and that was like that's a bullet point in my notes that it was like there's a lot that happened in this movie very quickly. That the whole like I've got another bullet point in my notes that like the all of the signs of Bev having problems were there already at Papa's funeral. She was there with the dude they call in passing Matt. That was obviously like involved in drugs in some way. She was like nodding off at the funeral. Like the signs were there. The movie did a pretty decent job of showing like a lot of that subtle shit that I guess I was saying the movie wasn't very subtle earlier, but it did do a good job of like showing the signs that were there that everyone was apparently missing for years. Because you know, JD like heroin, Lindsay, really? What the hell? It's like, did this come out of nowhere? Like it doesn't seem, as a viewer, it does not seem like it came out of nowhere, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like, did you really not see this coming? Because the audience did, and we're not even there.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, yeah. But I do want one scene I did want to talk about. How did you feel about JD providing the clean piss for Bev during the like? Was that the right thing to do? The wrong thing to do? Like, do you agree with Mama with what she said?
Maybe if we bail her out this one time, she'll get her shit together, more or less.
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
We help her this one time. I can say that in my experience, that if you do not, so okay, I think that the best parents, what they do is they allow children to bear as much weight for the consequences of their mistake as is necessary without actually causing them permanent harm.
Yes.
So, you know, there's some things where, for instance, you know, my I think it was my niece, she got herself like kind of tied up in a chair she was climbing through.
Okay.
And it was like, help me out, help me out. She could get out.
Yeah.
And I knew how she would be able to do it, and I knew she was capable, and I knew that she wouldn't hurt herself trying.
Yeah. So
and
instead you left her there for a few hours. Yeah,
Well, no, it only took a couple minutes. It's like, you climbed in there, right? And she was like, yeah. I was like, well, I think it was my niece. There's just a lot of kids in my family. Sometimes it runs together. They all do weird shit. Mm-hmm. And it was like, well, you can get yourself out. And a little bit of struggle, a little bit. Okay. Slipped right out.
That's totally different than like letting them, you know, injure themselves where it's actually going to be like, an injury.
Like, yeah. Feel free to climb on top of that thing. It will definitely result in a traumatic brain injury, you know? And so two things happen. One, she understands you get yourself in, you get yourself out.
Sure.
You got there, you get out. Two, it builds a little confidence.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, I got myself out.
Yeah.
And I think that the point that at the end of the movie where JD is in the hotel room with his mom and he says, Lindsay's coming, I hope you wait for her, but I have to go.
Yeah.
My whole perspective is that, well, number one, JD was a child and he was told by an adult that he trusted to do this. So that's why he did that.
Yeah.
So the young JD is not in any way to blame, I don't think. But in my opinion, when people are not allowed to carry the weight of the consequences of what they do, they don't learn. And, you know, I can tell you from personal experience, until, you know, I'm not necessarily what you would call an alcoholic, but alcohol abuse is still a thing. Mm-hmm. And just because you don't have to have a shot of Jack when you wake up, or you can't like go doesn't mean you don't have a problem. And until I had a situation where the consequences of my drinking caught up with me,
Yeah.
I didn't change anything. And everybody has their own bottom for certain things. There's a
True.
certain level of enough is enough. And for me, is this more of a response than you bargained for?
No, it's what I wanted.
We've been doing this a while. I'm sure you expected it. For me, I don't think that that's a good idea. That when you bail somebody out enough times and they don't have to deal with the consequences of what they've done, then they don't learn anything. You need to have. That's how the human brain works. Like
I agree.
our memory isn't necessarily. Yeah, like our memory isn't necessarily for remembering specific details. It's having a general understanding of what happened so you don't do it again. I reached close to that insect and it stung me and that hurt. I better stay away from that insect from now on. Or I got close to that like slithery reptile thing and it
Yeah.
snapped at me. Maybe I should stay away when I see one next time, that sort of stuff. Or the person from this group over here tried to hurt me and I had to run away. Maybe in the future I should stay away from that group and stay with mine, like old school humaning. That, if you don't have negative consequences, it's Pavlov, dude. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement.
Yeah.
It's the simplest form of psychology. And, and for me, like we did an episode many months ago in our old theme that I asked to call flexing debt, that you make bad financial decisions because you want to look a certain way.
Yeah.
And I probably could have asked some people to bail me out. But I decided, no, I need to just shoulder the burden of this. I need to get myself out of the bad financial situation that I'm in. I need to understand. I need to leave this thing messed up long enough that I have to fix it and I will remember.
Yes.
Because if you never have to deal with what stuff does, if you can always rely on someone, you will always rely on someone. And I'm not trying to say, like, in this very specific instance, I do not think it was the proper thing for him to offer his piss to help out. But it's all about the situation. Is there a situation in which that might be a good idea? I don't know. Maybe depends on the situation. Nuance.
See, I want to offer why I disagree. So I feel like I don't want to cut you off. I feel like I give you enough time to build your argument. So,
way more than enough. Thanks.
So here's why I would disagree, though. I do completely agree with almost everything you said. Up until the point where I don't think this situation was that, because if you didn't help her out here, the nursing board has no forgiveness. It is literally she loses her license. She's never going to be a nurse again. She's never going to work in the medical field again. If you feel that you know the person more and can make a more educated decision than the nursing board will, if you're like JD, try to argue later that she's a good person, whatever that means to him, that she worked at the hospital for 30 years, doesn't she deserve this? Like, people kind of make caveats for people based on like, oh, well, they did this and this and this, like the nursing board is just going to basically look at, okay, this person failed their drug test. They are, like hard line that they are out, versus like, as a family member. And I guess that's the point that Mama was trying to make, is that family is what really matters. And that's where it's like, I guess my initial opinion was yours. And then the more I tried to think of like, what is this world? What is family in this world? It's like, if that is like, if you feel like this family unit, I know this person better than this bureaucratic decision, board does, and that my decision in this is more knowledgeable than theirs, then I can see why they're saying that. But it is just straight lying. It is just straight cheating. However, with that being said, it's like, is family more important than that? Are the rules of the family actually more important than the rules of, the government or the law enforcement or whatever would be the deciding factor there?
I guess at that point in the film, I felt like I knew that character well enough to know that it was a bad decision.
Yeah.
Because I have seen people who have the same mentality, family's all that matters, that really screw their family over by bailing them out too much.
Yeah. Yep.
And in fact, like there's a close friend of mine now that has a sibling that all that's ever been done was in the name of taking care of this person, and in the name of family, they were bailed out, and their sibling has no idea or grounding of responsibility whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, like you said, I mean, perhaps for the people involved, perhaps there's things that the audience is blind to, maybe even things that are mentioned in the book that we didn't see in the movie.
Yeah.
That, you know, maybe there is something about them that they know differently. But we can also see we have sort of this sort of omnipresence as the audience that we get to see later. And so maybe it's easier for us, you know, thinking that, well, we know how it turns out. Well, his grandmother did not know.
True.
What his grandmother did was had hope. Most of the time I find hope to be a foolish luxury. But, you know, she had some.
Yeah.
And does that make her guilty? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it just makes her someone's mom, honestly.
Yep, I agree.
So yeah, I mean, I see your perspective, and I think that it makes a good bit of sense. And, you know, a lot of my perspective on it is based on the fact that we get to know the future.
Yeah, true. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I do think either way, I don't think one of us is like right or wrong, but I think that it's at least an interesting conversation that can be had there. I think there's nuance to that decision, that it is like, whether or not Bev was the situation, there probably would be situations where the correct answer may be lying to the board, you know, like what I mean, like for instance, you know, create the hypothetical character that person went on to cure cancer or whatever, you know, like they kept their license, you know, like of course that didn't actually happen, but it's like you could think, you know, as a person close to that individual, that you know them better, that this decision, you know, like I'm not going to let the board make this decision. We're going to take this into our own hands as a family. And that's like what I guess Mama was saying with how important family was to her. There was one other thing I really wanted to touch on that this jumped out to me whenever JD finally shows Bev a picture of Usha, and her first question is, what is she? And it's like it's interesting to me that Bev is not racist at all. She is not at all saying anything is wrong with Usha. She even calls her like really pretty, and I don't think she has anything negative to say about her. However, there is this thing that happens a lot in areas in the South, a lot in smaller towns, where even if people are not racist, they are very, very concerned with race. And where, like, for instance, when the first question seeing someone's picture is, what is she? Why is race that important to where it's your first question? I think that causes a lot of division, a lot of issues that people have, where people on the left, whatever, would see that and say, oh, they're being racist. Like, they're technically not, but there is an interesting question of like, why is race that important to you then? Like, you're not actually being racist, but like, what is it that makes race the forefront of what you care about? Why is it like,
it's funny because I'm sure I've told you this. Like I get that sometimes. Like I've actually had people ask me, "What are you?" And you know, with my facial features, being half Indian, having a beard, especially in the summer when I tan quite well, people have asked me, "What are you?" And usually I'll say, "Human?" ? And then they sit there and look at me weird, and then I say, carbon-based bipedal primate, and they look at me weirder, and they mean, no, I mean, like, what's your ethnicity? Or they'll say, where are you from? And I'll say, you know, I'm from here. And they'll be like, really? I was like, oh, sorry, I mean, what's your ethnicity, your lineage, your ancestry? Like, oh, why don't you just ask? So like, I'm kind of a smartass about it, but I mean, I can tell you that my mother actually, because I think that it's not necessarily that they're concerned with race, it's a lack of exposure, and a lack of exposure is kind of ignorance. It's a lack of experience. So I can tell you that my mother actually, so my father's Indian, and her oldest brother was concerned that she was dating a black guy. He didn't understand that there was another land across the sea in which there was more than white people and black people.
That's it. Yep.
That it was an issue, and it wasn't even like the right issue.
Yeah.
It's just like a never being exposed thing.
It's a topic in debates. It's called like being not even wrong. It's like so far off base that it's like it's not even wrong. It's I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it's a weird thing because like you couldn't because she's not looking at the picture and saying, I think that I'm better than that person based on their skin color.
Yep.
She didn't say that. She said a really weird thing like, what is she? And the implication is almost like this person isn't human. Yeah. But I don't think that's what they mean.
And yes, and I don't think that is either. And I don't think, and like you're saying, there is no actual. If you look at what racism is supposed to be where you think that a race is superior to another. I don't think there's anything that she is saying that leads to racism. I don't even think there's anything that she is saying that lends itself to even prejudice. She is not even thinking that she knows something about this person based on their ethnicity. She is just simply interested in what this person's ethnicity is right off the bat. However, that in itself does seem to some people as off-putting. And I have learned to not look at it that way, but it is strange to me when someone's first question is like, it is like I've said, why does it matter that much? Why is your first question? But, because definitely part of me does wonder, is there any nationalistic undertones to that? It's like, are you first caring about what someone else's race is because you have any sort of feeling that like race matters in some way as far as, I mean, I got a case in point. We put things into categories because they give us some sort of meaningful information. If it wasn't meaningful, we would not label things. So if you're not feeling like you're getting any sort of information by learning what race they are, what does it actually matter? It's like, why not get to know the person first as a conversation, as anything about them besides needing to know like, oh, well, what race are they first? But
yeah, I tend to agree in a lot of ways. Like, well, why is that the first question? There are some occasions where I think with me, like being that I'm kind of a mutt as far as like what we categorize as ethnic groups go, I think for me, a lot of it is just genuine curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that sometimes people just really wonder, and then giving the benefit of the doubt here, I think that maybe when that curiosity is indulged, perhaps then when they find out, maybe they're curious to know some things about whatever part of that culture I can tell them, or what unique experience did you have having an Indian father? What's it like for you? I can tell you, I didn't learn the rules of football until I was a teenager.
Yep.
Because football is fucking soccer, bro.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's trivial, but I try to give people the benefit of the doubt now. It used to bother me a little bit before, but like for instance, like on a first date, like I meet somebody from Tinder, or a friend of mine sets me up with somebody, and they're like, "Hello, hi, I'm distanced." Oh, cool. What's your ethnicity? Like, wait, what?
Yeah, that
I'd be like, I mean, it'd
be a little weird.
Like, can you take your first sip of coffee before you ask me that, please?
But I do think it leads to a big misunderstanding where I can understand why people view that as racist. And then they would claim that person is being, I would say they're wrong, but I can understand why they are at least leading down that path to becoming wrong, because they're just assuming like, well, shit, why do they care about race? They must be racist. Like, that's a leap in logic that doesn't actually follow, but I at least understand why they're going down that path, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that because it does seem like that individual is predisposed with that. Like, that's a thing that before we go any further, I must know, so then I can establish whatever stereotypes I need.
Well, and especially if you have stereotypes about people from small towns or people that lean conservative or something like that, and you think like, oh, and then that reaffirms the stereotype you have. Like, oh, see, I knew they were racist. She wants to know what race they are right away. Like,
and that in itself is also just another prejudice. Like, you're from a small town, That's why this is silly, but that's why I love riding a motorcycle that's a street fighter or a naked bike,
Mhm.
because it kind of looks like a sport bike,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have plastics on the side and the seating position is upright. They're like, okay, person is neither a reckless 20-something nor an outlaw. I don't know what stereotype to fit him into.
Yep.
You know, it's like so yeah, yeah, it's fun. It's fun, these things.
It is definitely interesting. I love questioning stereotypes. I mean, that is one thing I've realized about myself is I hate prejudice a lot. I mean, of course, like it's a brave thing to say, right? But no, I mean, like at a pet peeve level, I really hate when someone thinks they know something about me or someone else based on any sort of visual appearance or any sort of like level one information they gain. I hate whenever you immediately think like, oh, this person looks like this, so they must believe this and think this and do this. And like, I just, that type of shit at a pet peeve level, I hate. So I love whenever things question that or challenge that. I think that's always great.
Yeah, I love when, because I've actually had people try to like talk shit to me or whatever, and they'd be like, oh, well, I know your people don't eat bacon. And I'm like, wait, what?
What are my people? Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I actually, I don't think Brahmins are supposed to eat meat at all. And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, my family, my overseas family are Hindu. Like, we're not.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, wait, which Abrahamic religion are you thinking that, you know? And
you know, it's a lot more 7-Eleven than 9/11, I think.
Yeah. You know what? That's not even wrong.
It is.
I didn't know that was a thing now, but I love that. I didn't know it until now, but I have had so many situations that were appropriate to use that term, and now I'm so happy I found it.
It's a good one.
This will be a thing for me all the time now. But yeah, I mean, is your take specifically, because, you know, like obviously colloquially, the definition of racism has broadened a lot.
Yeah.
To the point where even being interested in someone's race might be defined as racist, you know, but the way I see it is just curiosity. Like if I hear someone with an accent, which, I mean, everybody has an accent. I hear someone with an accent that's different than my accent.
Sure.
Then, you know, even if it's like some kind of East Coast or some Midwestern area I'm not familiar with, it seems that in certain areas of Arizona, there's a unique accent that you don't hear often. You know, do Australian people that are from the city get irritated with Americans asking if they're British all the time?
Probably. Like, yeah.
And is that any different? Like, and why are you so predisposed with, you know, if this person is British or not? I mean, I had a buddy, there's someone who is clearly like Northern English, and I had a friend ask if he was an Aussie. And I was like, bro.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Not even close. Yeah.
Like, how drunk are you right now, man? Like, yeah. But hey, you know, let's hear it for Bev, because it turns out that she, at the making of the film, had been sober for 6 years.
Which is cool. Really? I did not say. Okay, that's.
So that
was after the credits, right? That's right. Yeah.
Good job, Bev. We hope that you're sticking with it.
Which I am glad they gave it some sort of conclusion, like with the final facts there. Then, because I hated the way the movie ended with her just like leaving her at the hotel and him going back to the, like, yeah, I did not feel like the narrative ended very strongly at all. It's like, where was the resolution other than like the text on screen afterwards?
It's like, we need 4 hours. Let's just tell them that she was sober for 6 years. It's true. Let's just put it there.
Yeah.
And so now, as I often do, I'd like to hit the self in general part and just say that if you're out there and you're having some problems, if you recognize you have unhealthy ways of dealing with grief, if you find yourself drinking or taking opioids or whatever, if you find that you're having emotional issues and you're not dealing with relationships well in your life and that's just it, like you can't handle it anymore, there are places to go. There's all kinds of resources for you to reach out to. There's, you know, free clinics you can go to talk to somebody. There's hotlines you can call if you're feeling like the way that you're living isn't working anymore. Please do something about it.
Yeah.
Like the character in this film, who's also a real person, Beverly was able to do it. It took her a long time, but it's worth it. Trust me, it really is. Like, I know tons of people that are in Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, and they tell me all the time how much better their lives are. So if you're out there and you need it, go find it.
It's not easy, but it's simple. And that is one of the tools that, like we've talked about before, you know, things changing, technology at our fingertips. It can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. One of the most beautiful things it gives us is the ability to reach out, talk to people across the world, reach out for help even. And yeah, you can have literally a Google search a few clicks away. You can be talking to someone within a few minutes. And that is something that has not been, you know, not been the reality for a lot of human history. So yeah, make use of the tools at our disposal. And yeah, if you feel like you need, if you feel like you even have a question that you may need help, there are people out there to even just get that ball rolling and talk. But yeah. Is there anything else you want to touch on in your notes before we get to like movie crush and favorite line?
Yeah. On to lighter things now.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to. The only thing I have to say is, fucking Trent, man. That's not even a real name.
I didn't get that at all. I
didn't make any sense. Like, I know a Trent.
And it was really, I also hated the scene afterwards of like going into the warehouse, just being stupid kids, but like, it just felt like he should have known better at that age. He should have been more mature. Like, okay, think back to what age was he supposed to be there? He's like 15 probably, right?
Yeah.
Something like, okay, we were stupid kids, right? Like we like,
yeah.
I think like, but even at that age, like, I don't think we ever considered breaking into a warehouse to break shit just simply for vengeance almost, or for like, you know what I mean? Like, we literally, like, we kicked around the ideas of possibly like robbing someone's place of work, but it was like super covert and wanting to get away with it. And like, and of course we never did it because it was like a stupid fucking up, but it was like, we were fucking idiots, but still knew a lot better. Like, it just seems like so much of this was like, okay, was he supposed to be younger? Was he like, could you have set up something with the character development in some way to make it feel like this made more sense than just, okay, now he's just an idiot. Like,
well, there's that heavy-handed again. They were just like, what is the most heavy-handed way we can show the audience that Mama needs to step in? And I agree. I mean, there's a lot of dumb shit that we did. Like, so many things we saw in Jackass. Like, you know, do you remember when we? I think we call it like aggressive chairing.
Yes.
Where we like went out with like a cheap office chair and like rolled down hills in it.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, did it like
you said, different kind of stupid.
Yes.
Like,
and that's, I mean, even that, it's like the type of stupid we were doing. It's like, I feel like we were at least aware of the laws and the consequences and like took that into consideration. And it just seems like the person that they showed us JD was, and the level of responsibility that he had and everything, it was like, it just seemed out of place, like at that point in his life, to be doing that. Maybe it was the editing, maybe that was supposed to be earlier, maybe it just didn't fit in right. But yeah, just a lot of it, yeah, just felt kind of, yeah, like half-baked almost.
Yeah, that's it for me, man. I really just wanted to talk about fucking Trent.
Just wanted to talk about I want that to be a quote on a shirt. I really just wanted to talk about fucking Trent. I like that. Let's do movie crush then. Who was I think I went first last time. Who was your movie crush for this?
I mean, even though it's a flat character mostly, Usha, man.
Same. I think that's the only right answer.
Like,
yep.
Yeah, I agree. Like, there's no, I mean, honestly, like, Bev is probably the type of person I've dated in the past several times. But yeah, I mean, Usha's just, you know, like, just a reliable person. Like, Um,
Great
uh,
partner.
yeah, like someone that's willing to help and sacrifice a little bit where necessary without being selfless, like having
Yeah.
like her own life and her own goals and her own, ambitions, being super smart, super reliable, super considerate,
Yep.
and in a way that's not like overbearing or creepy.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I really don't think it could have been anybody else.
Yep. If it was more actor than character, I would have, of course, gone with the obvious choice, Glenn Close. No, I'm just kidding. No. If it was actor, not character, I do think Amy Adams is a great actor. I think she's been in a lot
Oh
of
yeah,
great stuff. That like, but the character Bev though was even though yeah tried to paint it with a little bit of a silver lining, like almost irredeemable in a lot of parts. Bev did like a lot of like really shitty stuff, like a lot, and yeah, feels bad saying because like a real person too. But I would think probably the real person with the changes they've been through in their life and the growth that they've gone through would probably recognize that they did some shitty stuff. I don't think that they would take offense to hearing that. I think so I think that probably that they would look at the portrayal of their character in this movie and say like, during at least certain parts of their life that yeah, they probably weren't the best person that they could be and they weren't the best mother that they could be. But yeah, seeing the growth and the change is definitely worth it. But yeah, Bev was rough in this one. Could not have that be my movie crush. And then like the other
oh
redeeming
yeah,
character was like JD, but like even that was in the movie too flat to be like that good of a kid. Like yeah, even, I don't know. Yeah, I think Usha was just the only right choice. Yeah.
agreed. Fun fact: apparently, Frida Pinto played Latika, older Latika, in Slumdog Millionaire.
Oh really? That's a good one, dude. I love
Uh,
that movie.
That's a good movie. I mean, like some of it was a little cheesy, but
Oh yeah.
I like it a hell of a lot better than Monsoon Wedding. Blech. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah.
You ready for favorite line?
Oh yeah.
I I don't think we. Yeah, I think there's no chance we picked the same one.
I sincerely doubt it.
I had a tough time picking favorite line on this one. There were it wasn't because normally like I'll have 5 or 6 in there. I got to the end of this movie and had none in favorite line and had to like actually stop for a second and go back and be like, what am I going to choose as favorite line? Not that the dialogue was just like that bad. It's just for some reason nothing jumped out to me as a line that I really wanted to put there. Until I went back and really reviewed and really thought about it, I do think I landed on a favorite line that resonates with me. I think it's well written, and I think it made me start to think about things in an interesting way. That's what this podcast is all about. So my favorite line was from Mama, from Glenn Close. Family is the only thing that means a goddamn thing. You'll learn that.
That was a good line, actually. I like that
It
a lot.
is. It's a good one.
There's one line that JD did later in the film that I liked, but I decided on a completely different one, mainly because honestly, like you got Bev and then Mama, close second, are the only really developed characters in the movie.
Yeah, yep.
So this one I picked because it shows the kind of dichotomy, the sort of internal struggle and the somewhat ironic juxtaposition within one character in the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's a super short one. It's Easter, God damn it!
That was a good one. Dude, that whole scene yeah.
I couldn't do that with a straight face. I tried so hard to deliver it the way that Amy Adams did, but that scene was fucking hilarious. I was like, I saw that shit and I was like, wow,
These are our family heirlooms. Yeah, it's oh man. They did, I mean, I don't know if it was the writing or Amy Adams, but the portrayal of Crazy was pretty good. I do have to like, I mean she is a great actress, so I mean it may just be her, but yeah, there were quite a few scenes it was like, yeah, this bitch is nuts. So, next week, I am pumped about this. We're not giving choices to each other. We have landed on what we are definitely doing next week. And it's going to take a little bit of homework. We talked about it. We are going to have to watch 2 movies for it. The same movie twice basically. So, next week's episode, we will be reviewing Justice League Justice is Gray, of course, better known as the Snyder Cut. So to do so, I think you're in the same boat as me. You have seen the original Justice League, but it has been quite a while, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe, yeah, looking up, preparing for this episode, the original Justice League dropped in hold on, was it 2017?
Yeah, that's the dates that I found on everything.
So 4 years later is the director's cut. That normally doesn't happen. Normally we get the director's cut like with the DVD or Blu-ray release. So this is a different movie. I mean, it is like I'm interested to talk about this one, but it is, as we were talking about, it is going to be a big undertaking because the Snyder Cut itself is over 4 hours long. The original Justice League is over 2, right? So it's basically like close to 7 hours of movie time for it. But yeah, so next week we will go into Justice League, and I'm excited to talk about it. How did you feel about the original Justice League? Do you remember in 2017 or whenever you watched that, what your initial thoughts were?
I remember thinking that it wasn't the worst thing I'd ever seen, but it just didn't give what I thought it would. It didn't offer me what I thought it was going to.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it not being quite lackluster. And for me, like I haven't even finished the Snyder cut.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to watch that, then watch the old one, then watch the new one again. So
That's what I'm doing. Yep.
And it's funny because I think we had the discussion that we might be late to the party, but dude, this shit is so long. I think there's still people debating if they want to watch it or not.
Oh, there are. Yeah, 100%.
So I think that, we can put in the labor to like either have people spend their time on something good or tell them not to waste their time on something awful.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I mean, I won't say anything about what I've watched so far. So we'll leave it all for the next episode. But yeah, I mean, what about you, man? Were you just not super impressed with it? Because I imagine you wouldn't be, being that you like MCU so much, because the bar is very high with MCU.
Yeah, exactly. And that's to me, when I saw the first Justice League, it was, of course I had to compare it to Avengers. You can't not, so I mean, that's exactly what it is. And it's like, I'm going to talk about this next week. I'll always bring this point home. The MCU is so successful because they get years to develop their characters. The emotional scenes feel so real because you've been with that character for multiple years. Unfortunately, DC tried to rush this. They did not do the thing where the Avengers worked because you got a solo Iron Man movie, then a solo Thor movie, then a solo Captain movie, then they all team up. You build to that rather than like, all right, let's throw out a Batman versus Superman movie, and then now this Justice League movie. Like it doesn't build the way that it naturally should, and I think what the kids would say, it just doesn't slap the way that it should. It just doesn't hit right. And so when I saw the original Justice League, that's kind of how I felt. That it was like, it wasn't horrible, but at the same time, it was like, here's a competitor doing it correctly. You're coming late to the party and doing it not as well as they are. It's like, to me, in my opinion, it's like if you're bringing a product to the environment after the marker that has already got their hold on the market share, you have to do something better or different, not just try to. It's almost like, hey, I know you guys like those Avengers movies, but Batman and Superman are really cool, right? Wouldn't you want them to be in them too? Like, it's like, it's not like trying to do something different. It's almost just trying to like do the same thing with characters that may resonate with someone else instead.
Dude, you should clip that and make it your review of the 2017 movie. That would be a good teaser clip for the next week's episode.
That's not a bad idea, honestly. Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea.
That was a quality review of the first one in a limited amount of time, and I agree with everything you said. That was all spot on as hell.
Well, awesome. With that being said, let's end on a high point. You agreed with everything I said. I win this episode. This is going to bring us to the end of another episode of the Metacast Movie Show. If you guys are watching this on YouTube and you've enjoyed the discussion, please hit the like button, subscribe to keep up to date, and comment below and tell us how you felt about Hillbilly Elegy.
If you want to get in touch with your hillbilly roots, or if you want to further keep up to date or even join us as a guest on a future episode, please join our Discord. The link is in the description below. We will be live next week on Wednesday at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylaTV.
Thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you guys have a great week.